Hello, family, and welcome back to Noah Folktales. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Now sit back and relax, because today's story is one that will touch your heart. It's a story about two broken people from very different worlds. She was a single mom, just trying to survive. He was a powerful CEO who had lost everything that mattered to him. One act of kindness brought them together, and neither of them ever expected love to grow from that moment. This is the story of Ava and Elijah. It was a late night at the bar where Ava worked. The last customer had finally stumbled out, the heavy door shutting behind him with a dull thud. Ava sighed, exhausted from hours of standing, smiling, and serving drinks. The clock on the wall read 2:17 a.m. Too late for the bus, too early for the streets to feel safe. She turned off the neon sign outside, unclipped her name tag, and stepped into the cool night air. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars parked under a weak streetlight that flickered now and then. Ava dug into her purse, searching for her car keys. All she wanted was to go home, run a warm bath, and finally rest. But then she saw him. Leaning against a black luxury car was a man. His head was bowed, his tie hung loose around his neck, and in his hand was a nearly empty bottle of whiskey. The dim light revealed his sharp jawline and tired face. Ava froze. She recognized him immediately. It was Elijah Blackwell. Yes, that Elijah Blackwell, the young, successful CEO of Blackwell Innovations, a man known for building an empire and becoming one of the city's youngest millionaires. He had come into her bar a few times before, always alone, always quiet, ordering the same neat scotch and drinking it slowly like it was the only thing holding him together. She never expected to see him like this, drunk, broken, and sitting on the cold pavement in the middle of the night. For a moment, Ava considered walking past him. He was rich, powerful, and definitely not her problem. But something in the way he sat there, like his world had completely fallen apart, touched her. She knew what it felt like to be invisible, to be hurting and have no one notice. So she walked toward him. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked softly. He looked up, his eyes red-eyed. He didn't answer, just stared at her, then at the bottle in his hand, as if he wasn't even sure how it got there. "You shouldn't be out here like this," Ava said. "Do you have someone you can call?" He gave a small, bitter laugh and shook his head. No one left to call. Her heart sank. She could hear the truth in his voice. Normally, Ava stayed away from customers. She had rules about getting involved. But something about him, something about the pain in his eyes, made her stay. "Look, you're not in any state to drive, and you shouldn't sleep out here on the street. Can you at least tell me where you live?" Elijah stared at her for a long moment before finally mumbling an address. It was in the city's high-end district. She knew immediately it was a penthouse. "All right," Ava said. "Come on, I'll take you home." He didn't argue. When she helped him up, she realized he was heavier than he looked, and taller too. He leaned against her as they walked to her old, beat-up car. The contrast was almost funny, him in his expensive suit sliding into her rusty sedan. The drive was quiet. He drifted in and out of sleep, his head resting against the window. Ava glanced at him from time to time. Beneath the expensive clothes and reputation, there was a sadness in him that went deeper than alcohol. When they finally reached the building, the doorman helped her get him into the elevator.
Clearly, this wasn't the first time he'd seen residents come home in this state. Inside the penthouse, Ava was stunned. The place was beautiful, modern, elegant, but also cold and impersonal, like no one really lived there. She guided Elijah to the couch and was about to leave when she noticed he was shivering. Sweat beaded along his forehead. She touched his skin. It was burning. He had a fever. Ava hesitated. She could have left, but instead, she stayed. She found a towel in the kitchen, soaked it in cold water, and placed it on his forehead. Then she pulled a chair close and sat down. For a while, she just watched him. This man who seemed to have everything, but in reality had nothing holding him together. She didn't know his story. He didn't know hers. But that night, two strangers, each carrying their own wounds, found themselves under the same roof. And without even realizing it, the first threads of something new were being woven between them. The sun peeked through the tall glass windows of Elijah's penthouse. Ava blinked awake, realizing she had fallen asleep sitting in the chair beside the couch. Her back ached, but when she looked over at Elijah, she saw him sleeping soundly, his fever broken. She stood quietly, smoothing her wrinkled shirt. She wasn't supposed to be here. She had to get home before her son, Liam, woke up. He was only 8 years old, and she couldn't risk him worrying. But just as she picked up her purse, Elijah stirred. His eyes fluttered open, confusion flickering in them, before settling on her. "You..." His voice was rough. "You stated?" Ava hesitated. "You had a fever. I couldn't just leave you like that." For a moment, Elijah just looked at her, as if no one had cared enough to do that for him in a long time. Then, almost awkwardly, he sat up. "You should have left me there," he muttered. "I didn't need help." Ava crossed her arms. "Actually, you did, and for the record, you're welcome." That earned the faintest ghost of a smile from him. But just as quickly, it faded. He ran his hand through his hair and stood, towering over her. "You shouldn't get involved with me," he said. "It won't end well." Ava wanted to argue, but she knew better. She had her own problems. Bills, rent, raising a child on her own. The last thing she needed was to get tangled up with a man like him. So she nodded and headed for the door. "Take care of yourself, Elijah." But as she left, Elijah couldn't stop watching her. Something about her, her honesty, her strength, had cut through the fog of his loneliness. Days passed. Ava returned to her routine, working late nights at the bar, rushing home to Liam in the mornings, and trying to keep their little world from falling apart. But then Elijah showed up again. He walked into the bar one evening, this time sober. His usual scotch sat untouched on the counter as he watched Ava move from table to table. Finally, when she had a moment, he said quietly, "Thank you for that night." She shrugged. "Don't mention it." But he did mention it, again and again. He started visiting the bar more often. Sometimes he sat in silence, sometimes they talked. Not about business, not about money, but about life, about things that actually mattered. Slowly, Ava realized he wasn't the arrogant billionaire people imagined. He was human, flawed, broken. He had lost his parents at a young age, built his empire from nothing, and somewhere along the way, he had given his heart to someone who shattered it. Her name was Natalia, the love of his life, the woman he had planned to marry, until she betrayed him, leaving Elijah questioning everything he thought was real. Ava listened, her heart aching for him. She knew betrayal too. Her ex had walked out on her and Liam, leaving her to carry the weight alone. She knew what it was to love and be abandoned. It was their pain that connected them. One evening, after closing the bar, Elijah offered to drive her home. Ava hesitated, but accepted. Instead of going straight to her apartment, he invited her to the penthouse. "I owe you dinner," he said simply. Ava wanted to refuse, but when she saw the sincerity in his eyes, she agreed. That night, she sat across from him at a long dining table, laughing at his clumsy attempt to cook pasta. The Elijah she saw that night wasn't the powerful CEO the world knew. He was just a man, lonely, and craving connection. After dinner, they sat on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below. For the first time in years, Ava felt seen. And Elijah? He felt alive again. One night turned into two, two turned into many. Slowly, Ava became part of his world. She filled the empty spaces of his penthouse with warmth, with laughter, with life, and Elijah found himself falling. But love stories are never simple. Just when Elijah started to believe he could move on, Natalia returned. She showed up at his office, dressed in elegance, her smile as disarming as ever. "Elijah," she whispered, "I made a mistake. I want us back." Her presence threw him into chaos. The pain, the betrayal, the memories, they all came rushing back. And for the first time since meeting Ava, Elijah pulled away. He stopped answering her calls, stopped visiting the bar, stopped showing up altogether. Ava tried to be strong, but she couldn't deny the ache in her chest. She knew it was too good to be true. Men like Elijah didn't end up with women like her. Still, the silence hurt. Weeks passed before Elijah finally appeared again. His face was drawn, his eyes tired. "Elijah," he said quietly, "I need to explain." But before he could, she shook her head. "You don't owe me anything, Elijah. I was just a distraction for you, and that's okay. I get it." Her words cut him deeper than he expected. Because to him, Ava was never just a distraction. She had become his anchor, the one person who made him feel whole again. But he had let fear and the ghost of his past drive him away. He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. With tears in her eyes, she whispered, "Don't make promises you can't keep." And just like that, she walked away. Elijah spent days, then weeks, trying to drown himself in work, but no matter what he did, he couldn't erase Ava from his mind. Her laughter, her strength, the way she cared without asking for anything in return. It haunted him. Finally, one night he drove to her apartment. He stood outside her door, heart pounding, unsure if she would even open it. When she finally did, Ava looked at him with guarded eyes. "I made a mistake," Elijah said. "I thought I needed to go back to what I lost, but the truth is, I don't want the past. I want you and Liam. You're the only real thing in my life, Ava." Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to believe him, but she was scared. "Don't say it if you don't mean it," she whispered. So Elijah proved it. Day by day he showed up, not just for her, but for Liam too. He went to school events, helped with homework, and even learned to cook pancakes on Saturday mornings. Slowly, Ava's walls began to crumble. It wasn't perfect. They fought. They doubted. But through it all, they chose each other. Elijah learned to let go of the past, and Ava learned to trust again. Together, they built something real, something stronger than either of them had before. And one evening, standing on the same balcony where they had shared so many conversations, Elijah took her hand. "Ava," he said, his voice steady, "you saved me when I didn't even want to be saved. You gave me back my life, and I want to spend the rest of it with you." With tears in her eyes, Ava whispered, "Yes." The city lights glowed around them, but in that moment, nothing else mattered. Two broken souls had found each other, and together they were whole. And that, family, is the story of Ava and Elijah, a story of heartbreak, healing, and the kind of love that changes everything. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and of course, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story like this on Fablefy.